Hello, and thank you for joining us for Eye on New Mexico today. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and this month we've been focusing on this program on the state of children in New Mexico. Joining me today, Lisa Stuckey and Rick Grimes, both from Children First Co-Parenting Support Services. Lisa is the executive director, and Rick is a facilitator with that program. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
We're trying to be solutions-oriented with some of these topics we've been discussing, and we'll tell you what Children First is all about in just a moment. Child abuse prevention really came into the forefront recently with the tragic story of Omari Varela, who police say was killed by his mother. And we later learned of such a tragic history involving that entire family. And what's interesting about Children First is it's a program that's really focused on helping parents and families, maybe parents struggling through a divorce, domestic violence issues sometimes come up in that. And Children First is really about helping families. Is that right, Lisa?
Yes. Basically, our focus is on helping the children, and by doing that, we work with the parents. We have psychoeducational classes for the co-parents, is what we call them, rather than ex-husband or wife, and they are both in classes separately with a group of people, and they're learning skills to communicate more effectively, not have the children pulled between parents, not witness when the parents are upset and angry and that type of thing.
What we see with these cases of child abuse are often parents who are struggling with whether it's substance abuse or domestic violence or just personal mental health issues, stress issues. And you can forget so easily, if you're going through a divorce, for example, how much the children are being affected.
Exactly. The impact on the children, that's what we're trying to influence, you know, try to help them be able to grow up in the healthiest manner that they can, despite dealing with the trauma of divorce. Or separation.
Yeah, absolutely. Children First has been around for over 10 years now. What does a typical class look like? Parents can call, get involved in one of these classes, and tell us what that looks like, Rick.
Well, we have 2 classes per session, and we do, what, 4 sessions a year?
The sessions run 4 times a year.
And they're co-facilitated by a man and a woman. And our backgrounds, like my background's in education, but we have people who have been therapists and mediators. And we're all trained in the Children First materials. The classes take place on Monday and Thursday evenings from 5 to 7:30. So people sign up, and we try to have the couples have one parent on one night and another parent on the other night. So they're getting the same information, and they're with a cohort of other people who are going through the same experience that they are. So our goal over time is for them to share some of their stories, stay positive, stay focused on their kids. Because frequently, again, whether they've been officially married or not, if they have children together, you know, they're always going to be parents. And so one of the things we point out is you may not always be a spouse, but you're always going to be a parent. Hence the rings on the book that you see. Yeah. We talk about the fact that if there's just 2 people and they have no children and you split up, it's still difficult. But if you have a child, the child's always going to be there. And the child is always going to be needing their parents.
That's a great point. He's referencing this book here, Cooperative Parenting and Divorce, Shielding Your Child from Conflict, which is such a key element in keeping children safe and healthy in New Mexico. Well, you know, and give us an example. What are some of the tips that you are teaching to parents?
Well, there's 4 basic components to the program. The first is keep your child out of the middle. Try not to create loyalty binds. So if you are going through a divorce or separation, the idea is don't put the child in a situation where they're having to be an adult and act like you, and so try to keep the kids in a manner where they're not experiencing the conflict. Second is let your child love both parents. While you may no longer be spouses, you're always going to be parents, and 2 parents are still always better than 1. So continue to look at the good things that each of you bring to your children. The third is we focus on nonviolent communication, and we use a lot of Marshall Rosenberg's materials with respect to that, but try to give them some communication techniques that allow them to work through their conflicts in a healthy manner. And the last is creating what we call a business partnership. You know, even though you're no longer married, you're always going to be dealing with your children, but stay focused on the children, because frequently when people come to the classes, they're so caught up in the conflict between each other, and the kids always suffer from that. So we show them a series of videos throughout the course where they see what it looks like from the child's perspective, if a child is seeing the parents interact in a negative way. And we talk about what happens developmentally. So one of the benefits is, like, let's say you mentioned that you have a 3-month-old and a 19-month-old.
Yeah.
You know, if there are other parents that are going through divorce that have kids the same age, what are they experiencing with their child? So we look developmentally at what's taking place with the kids. And myself, as a former retired educator, you know, I would see a lot of this both as a principal and as a teacher, where parents would come to teacher conferences, and you'd have to have one conference for one parent and another conference for another parent. And so we try to get them to take a look at the benefit of the kids seeing them interacting positively together. You know, even though they're no longer married, they can still be, you know, constructive parents.
So important. You know, Lisa, Rick points out his background's in education. He worked as a teacher, as a principal, as an administrator. But you have experts from all different kind of angles working with Children First. Is that right?
Yes. Well, we have a lot of licensed therapists. Each group we try to have a balance of a male and female facilitator as well as a licensed therapist, typically a mediator or somebody who has a lot of experience working with adults or groups or that type of thing, conflict resolution, because that's a big piece of it. Teaching people how to work with conflict in terms of new communication skills. And actually, I mean, it really can benefit anybody. Any parents, any groups. You know, I try to encourage people to think about it, well, if you want to negotiate for a raise with your boss, or, you know, working with other family members or coworkers, learning these skills can really help you work with people. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Well, I was going to say, just for example, frequently we talk to folks about never using the term never or always, like you're always causing problems or you never do this. And so we talk about trigger words that people use, and we try to stay away from the word you, for example. So with the nonviolent communication, we focus on what's the position, the situation, what are you feeling about that situation, what do you need, and what's your request. And that sounds fairly simple, but for people who have been with each other for a while and loved each other at one time, loved each other enough to create children, and that are now in this incredible conflict with each other, we try to get them to be proactive and take a look at ways they can nurture and communicate with each other, because they have the same common need. The common need for everybody that come to these classes is that they all want their children to be safe and secure, and they want to have better communication between the parents.
Yeah.
So we have some folks that are court-ordered and others that are come by referral.
I was actually just going to segue into that. Lisa, you mentioned that a lot of families are already going through a divorce, perhaps, and have a case going and are court-ordered to do this. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, most of our clients right now are court-ordered, but we're trying to reach out to more people, because a lot of people who come through the class, you know, when they first get there, they're like, I don't want to have to do this, you know, I'm doing enough, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to deal with my co-parent. And by the time they're finished with the program, they're, gosh, I wish I took this before I got married. This is, you know, everybody should take this. So we're trying to reach out to anybody who has children, because you're still co-parenting, whether you're together or not. And sometimes we get couples that come in because they want to work on their relationship. So
yeah, and that's the key. And we have your number that we've been putting up on the screen here, so we'll make sure we show that again. But you don't have to be court ordered. You can call this number or go to the website and look into those parenting, co-parenting classes and sign up for this. As you pointed out, even if you're still married and maybe looking for some tips.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, there's lots of things to look at. You know,
yeah, and you pointed out that a lot of people wish they'd had these types of skills taught to them before they had children.
Right, right. Because, you know, conflict is a given. You're always going to deal with conflict. And change is a given. So, you know, maybe you've worked through this one conflict and your whole life, you know, everything changes, you know, constantly, that all of a sudden you're trying to decide, you know, which school the child's going to go to. And that becomes a conflict. You know, one parent wants them to go to the public, one to the private, and it's a huge rift, and the kids experience it. Seeing parents in conflict who don't know how to communicate through conflict, so they're blaming. You know, parents are always modeling behaviors that kids absorb. They're like little sponges. They absorb the feelings and they absorb the behaviors, and that's what they learn to do themselves. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rick, you were a teacher for so many years and saw this. This is why you wanted to get involved with children first, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm not a child of divorce, but my former wife and I went through divorce together. We were both educators, and fortunately we had the skills as educators that we came through our divorce amicably. My sons are now adults, but I've seen so many families that, you know, they just go on for years and years. We get people of all different ages that come to this program, and sometimes the conflict just can last for years. And once they've taken the program and really gotten some of the skills, it's a process that we watch. It's about 9 weeks long, and usually by the 5th week they're starting to make the ahas, the adjustments, and they're really picking up what's taking place emotionally and the benefits to them in terms of following what we're trying to do with the program. So it's just interesting. You know, I tell people when they come to the class, you can take this class 3 different ways. As a prisoner, and you can tell it by the body language, you know, and you just have to be here because you're court ordered. Or you can be the vacationer. You're coming just to see what you might pick up, but maybe really won't read the book. Or the farmer, and the farmer listens to the other people in the group and reads the book and interacts and finds out how people are dealing with their children, and they stay focused on the kids. And so it really makes a significant difference, the approach that they bring to the class.
And you know, talking about Child Abuse Prevention Month here this April, we've really been expanding that to child welfare as a whole, because it's not just these most horrific cases of abuse we're talking about. We're talking about just children growing up in healthy families and becoming healthy adults. The effects can be lasting on children if they're even subjected to, as you pointed out, conflict in a family.
Right, right. I mean, a lot of times you see kids starting to act like they're sick or get sick. They don't want to go to school. They try to draw attention to themselves to pull it away from the conflict, and to try to get attention from both parents, and that can, you know, accelerate, and it turns into worse situations. Other kids will act out. They absorb, you know, bullying behavior can come out of this.
Exactly.
You know? They observe a parent bullying the mother or the father. It
Yeah.
can go either way.
Either
way.
Really,
Either way.
really can, and they learn those behaviors, and that's usually how kids learn bullying behaviors.
And so
It's not like they just come up with it themselves. They experience from somewhere, not necessarily their parents. You know?
And then we
So,
see these
right.
problems that persist in our communities that really do start in the families and with good parenting.
And it really is gratifying work to see people at the end of the course, you know, how their positions have changed and how they really can start to practice what we've been working with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of practice in the sessions where they actually have to practice the skills. And it's challenging, you know, and we have them work with each other and say, how, if, you know, somebody said that to you, how would you feel? So.
We also have a Safe Haven program that Lisa might want to talk about.
Yes, the Safe Haven is a program that allows parents who cannot be in contact with each other to drop off their child to trained monitors, and then then the other parent, that parent leaves and the other parent arrives, and it's a safe, neutral place to exchange children.
So in the more serious situations, there are options there too. Well,
Right, and that takes place in Santa Fe right now.
all right,
Okay.
well, I want to thank Lisa Stuckey and Rick Grimes for coming on and talking about Children First New Mexico. And remember, we do have their number. We can pull it up right here, or anything you see on this program. Anytime you can contact us here at KOB and get more information on that. Thank you both for being here. Stay with us. We'll have more on children in New Mexico coming up after this break. Thank you for staying with us. Earlier this week, we learned child abuse cases in New Mexico continue to grow, and there are more reports every day. Bernalillo County's district attorney gave us a look at just how many people are reporting child abuse. Nikki Ibarra has more on what may be behind the increase.
They're numbers you never want to see associated with kids, but in Bernalillo County, it's a reality.
Our cases are continuing. The number of cases that we receive are increasing. The number of cases that we're indicting are increasing drastically.
Numbers released today by District Attorney Carrie Brandenburg show us how many cases have been reported since 2011. Just this year alone, from January to March, 375 cases were screened. 80 of those have been indicted. Again, that's just in 3 months.
And is there any reason, do we have any kind of theory why the cases are increasing? We think it's either more cases are being reported or there's more abuse occurring.
High-profile child abuse cases could be the reason why more people are reporting. Cases like Omari Varela, who was just 9 years old when police say his mom kicked him to death. Or baby Isabella, whose mother's boyfriend is accused of abusing her. Those stories have resonated with people. They have stuck with people, showing just how important it is to speak up.
It brings to the forefront that we need to protect our children. We need to find a way to protect our children because those things shouldn't happen.
In Albuquerque, Nikki Ibarra, KOB, Eyewitness News 4.
We also got statewide numbers from CYFD that show an increase in how many people are calling to report child abuse. In January, a little more than 1,800 called in. Then just a month later, more than 2,000 reports came in. The majority were anonymous. The number of law enforcement officers reporting abuse also jumped in January and February. It's a disturbing way that children are being abused all over the world and right here in New Mexico. Child pornography. Last week, the state Supreme Court announced suspects facing multiple charges for having multiple child porn images should actually only face one criminal count. A controversial ruling, and Lauren Hanser looked at how the impact that could have on child porn cases all over New Mexico.
The state Supreme Court ruling overturned convictions for 2 New Mexico men, James Olson and Willard Ballard. Now they only face one charge each.
It dramatically reduces the risk of prison time in each and every case.
5th Judicial District Attorney Janetta Hicks says child porn suspects who would have faced decades in prison for multiple counts face just 18 months under one count.
Often in these cases, the defendant has hundreds of images of multiple children. They take a long time to look for them, to search for them, and they download them over a long period of time. Pictures, video, everything. So every one of the cases that are currently pending will be affected by this decision.
Those represent, each picture represents a lifetime ruined. Can you even fathom being a 3-year-old child and being continually raped in front of cameras just for somebody's gratification? It happens all the time.
It's up to the state legislature to clarify the law.
I would urge the legislature to take up this issue on the earliest possible opportunity, because it will affect thousands of children. It will affect lots of different cases, and we need to remove these people from our society. We need to be able to aggressively prosecute these cases.
And if we are not prosecuting that kind of child abuse to its fullest all the time, how are we even going to pretend to start preventing it?
In Roswell, Lauren Hansard, KOB Eyewitness News 4.
Earlier this month, we talked to the members of a new task force here in Albuquerque that's working to prevent child abuse. That task force was created in the aftermath of the Omari Varela abuse and death. This task force includes police, medical professionals, and other citizens who are all trying to work towards solutions with a goal of preventing future tragedies. Cece, we saw you there in Erica's story there. You were with APD for a long time, and now you're heading up this task force. Tell us a little bit about what you saw during your experience and what you're bringing now to the task force.
You know, when I worked in child abuse, we were co-located with CYFD. I think that made a huge difference because we had access to the CYFD investigators. So oftentimes we would be able to alert them of cases right as we got the calls. And I think when we moved out of the same building, it caused a barrier in communication. I really think that's what happened. Recently, I think that the steps to improve communication are going to go through. They're going to proceed. I'm really glad to hear that the CYFD workers will co-locate again with APD and the Family Advocacy Center. I think that's wonderful. I think that's going to solve a lot of what has gone on in the past.
Dr. Ornelas, you're coming to the task force from a physician's perspective, of course, and sadly you see cases every day of child abuse. You know, what was your hope getting involved in this task force?
Well, my hope has been that bringing everybody together, everybody who does this work on the front line, all the responders, people who do the investigations, people who provide advocacy services, people like myself and Dr. Strickler who do child abuse medical services, can put our heads together and work on getting a response for children with concerns of abuse and neglect, the best kind of response that we can get. And certainly there's a lot of people who really care about the work that they do. Everybody who's in this work is in it because they have a dedication to it. Otherwise you wouldn't continue to do this kind of work. But at the same time, we need to work together more efficiently so that we can come together and get the best result.
We do work with families, and through that work we do see how hard it is to work this system of mental health services.
Yes.
So definitely my expertise is, All Faith's expertise in this realm is what we like to bring to the task force is to talk about systemic issues. And what is it as we as society and we here in the state can do to better our systems, to work not only with the children who have been traumatized, but also their families. Very often we see that families need support. Parents are dealing with their own issues, past abuse that they never dealt with, substance abuse, mental health issues that are not addressed because of lack of services or lack of access to services.
And that task force is going to be hosting more meetings in the future that are open to the public if you want to suggest things or just get information on the solutions that are being brought up in our community to prevent child abuse. We'll keep you updated on KOB on those meetings. The goal, of course, of Child Abuse Prevention Month is to involve the entire community and look for ways we can all help end child abuse. This month we reported on a new office that's working to combat the problem in Valencia County, which sees a high number of reports. Jen Samp has more from Los Lunas, where CYFD and law enforcement will be working under one roof.
It may look like just a building, but within these walls, a new place to serve children in Valencia County. The first of its kind program is designed to be a place where numerous nonprofits and law enforcement can come together to support children who have been victims of abuse. Christina Ford, CEO of All Faith, says there will be an interview room for children just like this one in Albuquerque. Ford says over 1,000 children all over New Mexico sit in these chairs every year. She says up to 15% of them come from Valencia County.
We already see a good number of interviews every year that come from that area of the state.
CYFD says second to Bernalillo County, Valencia County has the most children in CYFD custody, and per capita, Valencia County has the highest referrals or calls to CYFD. Organizations like All Faiths will work together with CYFD, police, and the DA, all in one building for better communication. Also, a child will only have to revisit their traumatic past in one interview.
They get interviewed by a trained staff that gets recorded, and they don't get re-traumatized by having to repeat their stories.
These are services Stacy Johnson says she wished she had for her family in Valencia County a long time ago.
They understand that it's okay, right? It's okay to be where you are, because then things just get better. Then the more apt they are to accept the services.
CYFD plans to open these doors at the end of the summer. This building is located just down the street from the district courthouse off of 314. At least 4 employees are expected to work here. In Valencia County, Jen Samp, KOB, Eyewitness News 4.
If children aren't protected from the beginning of their lives and throughout their lives, we can see devastating consequences from that. The auto theft suspect who was shot and killed by Albuquerque police last week was a 19-year-old woman who we learned seemed to have a troubled childhood. Stuart Dyson learned more about Mary Hawks.
Mary was the adopted daughter of longtime Belen magistrate judge and police officer Danny Hawks. She had adult arrests for public drinking and shoplifting, a juvenile record of assault and battery. In the International District, she is remembered as a kind and caring young woman. Lucretia Price was a close friend.
She's a really nice person. She would always help out the homeless. She would get food for them and give it to them. She was the nicest person ever. She's just a good girl. She went to school and did what she was supposed to. She just had troubled times and stuff, and she was a great girl.
Catalina Acuna Olvera gave Mary a place to live after juvenile jail, became a godmother to her.
She was a bisexual queer youth, you know, and so this is a story about that too. You know, because queer youth are thrown away from their families and they're put out in the streets. They don't necessarily have to be incarcerated to be put on the streets.
Jerica Martinez is another close friend.
She had told me she was pregnant. I don't know how far along she was, but she was pregnant, and that's just another body dead. It's not one body, it's 2 bodies.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Killer cops have got to go!
Mary's friends joined community activists this morning to demonstrate against the police shootings that continue to trouble many people in the Albuquerque community.
Fire the mayor! Fire the chief!
Here's Mary Hawks herself reading a poem she wrote.
Can you guess where I'm from? I'm from a cave of darkness, where happiness is only a dream, where rich people live in a different universe, where drugs are the only escape. I'm from a world of misjudgment.
Haunting words there, and we can see how troubled children, how often their lives end up, and why it's so important to protect all of our children of all ages. A friend of Mary Hawks posted a video online urging people who are directing hatred toward police to instead focus on mentoring troubled children.
You say you're about the city, then where are you? What are you doing to change everything in this city? We can't rise up and battle the cops and stand against the cops until we stand up against ourselves.
That video has been shared more than 1,400 times since it was posted on Facebook on Tuesday. And again, as she pointed out, it's all about what you're doing. It's all about solutions here. So if you suspect a child is being abused, it's your duty to report it. We have that number here. You can call the state's hotline. Just dial #SAFE on a cell phone or the number you see on the screen there, 1-855-333-SAFE, S-A-F-E, from any phone. Again, we're focusing on keeping our children safe here in New Mexico. We'll see you back here next Sunday for another Eye on New Mexico.